So finally we get into the idea of conditional loops. A conditional loop is nothing more than a sequence of code that repeats indefinitely until a test condition is no longer met. Now that differs from a counted loop because a counted loop loops exactly or iterates a specific number of times. Conditional loop, we don't know how many times it's going to iterate. It may iterate forever. A game loop. A game loop is a perfect example of a conditional loop. This loop will go on until the user decides, I'm done playing. So it will go on forever if the user decides they're never going to finish playing. They're going to go on, just going to keep playing and playing and playing. In programming, the term we use for a conditional loop is what's called a while loop. So basically we say, while this condition is true, keep looping. Let's just try to keep it associated with the English language as much as possible. So the good thing about a conditional loop is that the syntax is extremely similar to stuff that we've already used, so it's very easy to learn. So basically, looking at a program like this, we have an integer has a value, an integer variable named num, it has a value of 7. And I have an if statement that says, if num is not equal to 10, get a new number. And then display what that number is. So basically, as long as it doesn't start at a 10, it's going to ask for this value. So we run this program, save it, enter a num, let's say 5. I'm going to say the number is 5. Now if I run the program again and I put in 8, I'm still going to get 8. Now the difference here is if this number starts at 10, that middle code will never actually be executed. The code inside that if statement just gets avoided and it automatically goes in. You see, I didn't even get asked what number I want anymore. It just said the number is 10. Simple as that. I'm going to modify this code. I'm just going to change, once I put this back, I'm going to change one single word. And by changing that one single word, it's going to change the complete outcome of this task. I'm going to change this if to the word while. The difference between an if and a while is that they both test a condition and they both will only execute the code if the test condition is true. The difference is that an if statement will only execute it once. A while statement will continually test and continually execute until that statement is no longer true. So if we do this now, num starts at 7, so while num is not equal to 10, well 7 is definitely not 10, it will execute that code. So now when I run the program, enter a number, let's say 4. Enter a new number, 8. Enter another number, 9. I can do this all day, and it's going to keep asking me until it gets a value of 10. Number is 10. So the difference being is that this statement, using this while loop, every single time will output the value of 10 for num, because it's never going to leave this while loop. It's going to get stuck inside this loop forever until the user enters the value 10. So that means we got to be careful while writing these types of loops, because our code will oftentimes just what we call freeze or hang, and the reason being is that we're stuck in a loop. We unintentionally got ourselves in an infinite loop because we didn't get the test condition to evaluate to false. So this, sometimes you may want an infinite loop. So for the example of a password program, maybe you're creating a password program that will ask the user for their name forever, and it gives them infinite options. So let's try that. So let's create a string variable called password. Let's give it the value, I don't know, blah blah. Doesn't really matter what it is. Oops. And let's create another string variable called guess. And we don't know what that is, so we're just going to leave it at blank to start with. And we're going to create a while loop that says, hey, while guess dot equals password. Remember, we have to use dot equals instead of equals equals when it comes to testing strings in Java. But we don't want it to equal. We want to keep looping as long as it's not equal. So we put that little exclamation mark there. While it is not equal, so while this produces a false, or we could just say equals false. Alright? So while it is not equal, ask for the information and store it, and then test again. So system.out.print enter your password, and what's in here? We're going to say guess is equal to input.next. I don't need to do any conversion. Next line, because it's already a string. And basically it's going to continue to ask, let's do something a little bit more clear. Let's call this, I don't know, my password. It's going to continually ask this while loop until guess is equal to my password. System.out.println access granted. There we go. So now we run our program. Enter a password. Bob. Nope. Frank. Nope. Blah. Nope. My password. Access granted. Great, it finishes. So that'll work one way. So we could say keep going until this. We could rewrite this in a completely different way. Maybe we want it to loop forever no matter what, and we're not going to test it up here in the condition. We're going to test it down here. We're going to say, hey, if guess dot equals password, we want it to stop looping. So we could just say equals true. There's a command that we learned when we learned switch statements. That command is break. What break allows us to do is exit the current loop that we're in immediately. So it's not even going to come back up and test this condition anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this. I'm just going to say while true. Well, the basics of a while loop says keep looping as long as the comparison doesn't evaluate to true, or sorry, as long as the comparison evaluates to true. Well, true definitely evaluates to true, and it is always going to evaluate to true. So that means that this loop is going to run forever, no matter what. The only way we can get out of that loop is to break out of it. So what we need to do is have an if statement that says, hey, if we found what we want, break out. That's basically what the game loop does. It says keep going until I get an action that says stop. Then break out of the loop. So there's two different ways of achieving the same results, but they're both going to do the exact same thing. Again, I can put in gibberish, I can put in numbers, but eventually I need to put in the right word and access granted. We get the exact same results. So we can break out of a loop early, and we can create infinite loops just by making sure that we're always testing for true, because true does definitely evaluate to true. So that is conditional loops. Everything we need to know about them.